Long before anyone could remember the first road that cut across the valley, there was a village where people believed every human being carried three treasures that could never be measured by wealth. The first was the heart, because it held compassion. The second was the name, because it carried honor. The third was the shadow, because it silently witnessed every choice a person ever made. Elders often warn children never to mock another person's shadow, never to step deliberately upon it, and never to wish it away in anger. A shadow, they said, was not merely darkness following the body. Thus, it was the quiet proof that the soul still walked honestly beneath the sun. Most people smile politely at those old stories, believing they belong to another age. But the oldest woman in the village always whispered the same words whenever someone laughed. The day people begin selling what cannot be seen is the day they discover how expensive regret truly is. Not far from the center of that village lived a woman named Amara. She owned no land worth speaking of, no livestock beyond two aging chickens, and no jewelry except a copper bracelet that had belonged to her mother. Tiny mud house leaned slightly to one side after years of rainstorms, its roof patched with woven reeds that whistled whenever the wind passed through. Every morning before dawn, she rose from her straw mat, wrapped a faded cloth around her shoulders, and walked several miles into the forest to gather firewood. By midday, she carried enormous bundles back to the market, where she sold them for barely enough coins to buy cassava flour and a little cooking oil. Some days, she returned home with food. Other days, she drank water and slept, convincing herself that tomorrow would surely be kinder. Poverty pressed heavily upon her shoulders. Bitterness never settled in her heart. When an elderly neighbor became too weak to fetch water, Amara carried it without asking for payment. When children wandered barefoot through the marketplace, she smiled warmly and shared whatever roasted maize she happened to have. Even those who possessed far more than she did admitted that the poor woman somehow carried herself with a quiet dignity that no amount of wealth could purchase. Yet, kindness rarely protected anyone from cruelty. Across the dusty road lived a merchant named Dagon, whose granaries overflowed every harvest season. His compound was surrounded by tall wooden fences, guarded by fierce dogs that barked at anyone who lingered too long outside. Dagon enjoyed reminding others of his success. He wore embroidered robes even on ordinary afternoons and counted his coins loudly whenever customers entered his shop. Whenever Amara passed carrying another heavy bundle of firewood, he watched from his shaded porch with narrowed eyes. What use is kindness? He once muttered to another merchant. If he cannot even buy a decent meal. His companion laughed, but Dagon did not. Something about Amara unsettled him. She possessed nothing, yet people greeted her with genuine affection. Mothers trusted her with their children. Elders blessed her whenever she passed. Travelers remembered her smile long after forgetting the prices in Dagon's store. It irritated him. That respect followed someone who owned almost nothing. One afternoon, the skies darkened without warning. Thick clouds rolled over the hills, swallowing the sunlight until the village seemed trapped beneath an enormous gray blanket. Rain crashed onto the earth with astonishing force. Merchants rushed to cover their goods, while villagers hurried home before the paths became rivers of mud. Amara remained beneath an old baobab tree, clutching her bundle of wood and waiting for the storm to weaken. Thunder echoed through the valley like distant drums. Lightning split the heavens, illuminating the forest for only a heartbeat before darkness returned. That was when she noticed someone standing beneath another tree several paces away. The stranger had not been there a moment earlier. He wore spotless black robes. Despite the pouring rain, not a single drop appeared to touch his clothing. His face seemed ordinary enough, yet there was something deeply unsettling about his eyes. They reflected no fear of the storm. Instead, they held the patient stillness of someone who had already seen everything that could happen. "You work harder than anyone in this valley," the stranger said calmly. Amara hesitated. "I do what I must. What has it earned you?" She lowered her eyes. "Another day." The stranger smiled, though the expression never reached his eyes. "Sometimes another day is too expensive." Amara gathered her bundle tighter. "I should be going." "You should," he agreed. "But tomorrow you will wake before dawn. You will carry another load heavier than today's. You will sell it for fewer coins than yesterday. Next month, your roof will collapse. Before the next harvest, one of your chickens will die. After that, hunger will become your closest companion." His voice remained soft, almost sympathetic. Every word struck her like cold rain. "How do you know these things?" she whispered. "I know many things." Lightning flashed again. For the briefest instant, Amara thought the stranger had no shadow. When darkness returned, blinked rapidly, convincing herself she had imagined it. "You deserve better," he continued. "So do many people. But I am not speaking to many people." Silence settled between them while rain hammered the earth. "What do you want?" she finally asked. The stranger reached into his robe and produced a small leather pouch. It landed softly at her feet with the unmistakable sound of heavy coins. "There is enough gold here to change your life." Mara stayed without moving. "No one gives away gold." "No," he admitted. "Everything has a price. I have nothing left to sell." "You possess something more valuable than land." She frowned. "My labor." He shook his head slowly. "Your shadow." The wind seemed to stop breathing. "My shadow. Only the shadow. Nothing more." She laughed nervously. "That is impossible." "Is it?" He gestured toward the muddy ground where the fading light struggled against the storm. "Tell me, what has your shadow ever done for you?" Amara looked down. The outline beside her feet trembled beneath the shifting light. "It follows me." "Exactly. It belongs to me. For now." She stepped backward. "I do not understand." "You need not understand every bargain, only whether it improves your life." He nudged the pouch closer. "Take the gold. Give me your shadow. Tomorrow you will eat well. Next month your roof will be rebuilt. Within a year you could own fields larger than Dagan's." His words painted pictures. Her exhausted heart had tried desperately to forget. Warm meals, dry nights, new clothes, a life without constant fear. But why would anyone want a shadow? The stranger smiled again. "Everyone asked that question, and no one asked it twice." The rain gradually weakened until only scattered drops fell from the leaves. The village bells echoed faintly in the distance. Amara knew she should walk away. She truly did. Yet her empty stomach tightened painfully. She remembered the cracked walls of her home. She remembered burying her father with borrowed money she still had not. She remembered pretending not to notice children staring whenever her patched clothing tore. Again, "What happens to me?" she asked. "You become rich. And the shadow, it becomes mine. Will it hurt?" "Not at all." She searched his face for deception. Instead, she found only impossible confidence. Perhaps the old stories had been nothing more than stories. Perhaps a shadow truly was only darkness. After all, could darkness really feed the hungry? The stranger extended his hand. "No one will know." His voice sounded almost fatherly. "Oh, no one will even notice." Another long silence passed. Then, with trembling fingers, Amara lifted the leather pouch. Its weight astonished her. She had never held so much gold in her life. Tears filled her eyes. "This could save me," she whispered. "It already has." Slowly, uncertainly, she placed her hand into his. The air around them became strangely cold. The last rays of sunlight slipped beneath the clouds. For one impossible moment, the earth itself seemed to inhale. Then Amara felt something tug gently at her feet. Not painfully, not violently, only with the strange sensation of losing something she had never realized she could lose. She looked down, where her shadow had faithfully followed her every day since childhood. There was only empty ground. The stranger stepped backward. Behind him, stretching unnaturally across the wet earth, walked two shadows instead of one. He bowed politely. "Our business is concluded." Before Amara could speak another word, the wind swept across the clearing. Leaves spiraled into the air, and the stranger vanished as though he had never existed. She stood alone beneath the baobab tree, clutching a fortune in gold, while staring at the bare earth beneath her feet. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart. The evening sun emerged once more. Every tree cast a long shadow. Every bird cast a shadow as it crossed the sky. Every villager hurrying home carried a dark companion beside them. Only Amara walked toward the village with nothing following behind. By sunrise, whispers had already begun to spread through the village. No one could explain why Amara looked different. She smiled as she carried sacks of grain into her little house, hired builders to repair her broken roof, and paid every debt she owed without hesitation. The same people who had once pitied her now watched with wide eyes, wondering where such sudden wealth had come from. Some congratulated her, while others secretly searched for signs that she had stolen the gold. Degas, the wealthy merchant, observed everything from his porch. His envy grew stronger each day as Amara's life transformed before his eyes. Within weeks, her home stood proudly with fresh clay walls. She bought healthy goats, planted crops, and never again worried about an empty cooking pot. Yet, despite the comfort surrounding her, something inside her remained strangely unsettled. Every morning when the sun climbed into the sky, she instinctively looked down the ground. Beneath her feet remained empty. No shadow stretched beside her, no matter how bright the day became. At first, she convinced herself did not matter. Gold had solved every problem she had ever known. But slowly, little things began to change. Children stopped running toward her. Instead, they hid behind their mothers whenever she passed. Dogs whimpered and backed away with their tails tucked between their legs. Birds that usually sang outside her window flew away the moment she stepped into the yard. Even strangers seemed uncomfortable without understanding why. They stayed for only a moment before, quickly looking elsewhere. One evening, Amara visited the village well to fetch water. As she leaned over the stone edge, she expected to see her reflection smiling back. Instead, the water trembled, and for the briefest moment, she saw only darkness where her reflection should have been. She stumbled backward, spilling her bucket across the ground. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. No answer came. The oldest woman in the village happened to witness the moment. Her cloudy eyes fixed on the bare ground around Amara's feet, and her expression turned pale. "My child," the elder said softly, "where is your shadow?" Amara's heart pounded. I don't know." Old woman stepped closer but stopped before reaching her. You know, those words struck harder than any accusation. For the first time since the bargain, guilt settled heavily upon Amara's heart. She wanted to confess everything. Yet fear sealed her lips. Who would believe such a story? They would think hunger had driven her mad. That night, she could not sleep. Every strange glance, every frightened animal, every uneasy silence returned to her mind. The stranger's promise echoed inside her thoughts. No one will notice. He had lied. People noticed. Perhaps not with their eyes, but with something deeper. Days turned into weeks, and the village slowly began keeping its distance. Customers still bought her crops, yet conversations ended quickly whenever she approached. Invitations to weddings and celebrations stopped arriving. Mothers quietly pulled their children away. Loneliness replaced the hunger she had once known. Meanwhile, Dagan became obsessed with uncovering the secret of her fortune. He bribed workers who had repaired her house. He questioned merchants who sold her livestock. He even followed her through the marketplace, hoping she would reveal where she had hidden the rest of her wealth. One evening, he cornered her outside her gate. "You expect everyone to believe this happened honestly?" he demanded. Amara remained calm. "I owe you no explanation. You were starving 1 month ago. I worked." He laughed bitterly. "No one works themselves into riches that quickly." She turned away, but Dagan grabbed her wrist. "You found something." His voice lowered. "Or someone." Amara pulled free. "There are some questions that should never be asked." Those words only fueled his curiosity. The following afternoon, Dagan returned to the old baobab tree where villagers often sheltered during storms. It searched the ground for hours, mocking every tale he had ever heard about spirits and forgotten bargains. As the sun dipped below the hills, dark clouds gathered once again. A familiar wind swept through the branches. Then a calm voice emerged from behind him. "You are looking for something." Dagan slowly turned. The stranger stood exactly as before, dressed in flawless black robes untouched by rain. Instead of fear, greed lit Dagan's eyes. "So the stories are true." "They are. You made the poor woman rich. I offered her a choice." Dagan smiled. "I want the same offer." The stranger studied him carefully. "Do you? I have land, cattle, and servants, yet you still want more." "I deserve more." Faint smile crossed the stranger's face. "That is why you interest me." Produced another leather pouch, even heavier than the first. Dagan reached for it immediately. "What do you want in return?" "Your shadow." Without hesitation, Dagan laughed. "Only that." The stranger nodded. Dagan did not pause to think. He did not ask questions. He did not wonder why anyone would collect shadows. He simply accepted. The bargain was made before the first raindrop touched the earth. As the cold wind circled around them, Dagan watched his own shadow peel silently away from his feet and disappear beneath the stranger's robes. Instead of fear, felt triumph. He hurried home with his gold, believing he had outsmarted fate itself. High above the village, hidden behind the storm clouds, thunder rolled across the valley. Neither Amara nor Dagan realized that the stranger had never wanted their money, their homes, or even their loyalty. He had been collecting something far more precious, and with two shadows now in his possession, his true purpose was only beginning to unfold. The morning after Dagan sold his shadow, the village no longer felt the same. A strange silence settled over the fields. Animals refused to graze. Children woke from frightening dreams, and even the elders admitted that something unseen had entered their lives. Amara watched the unease spread and finally understood that her bargain had not ended with her wealth. It had opened a door. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, she went to the oldest woman in the village and confessed everything. She spoke of the storm, the stranger, the gold, and the shadow she had traded for a better life. The old woman listened without interrupting. When Amara finished, she simply nodded. I feared the old stories would one day become real again, she said. A shadow is more than darkness. It carries the truth of who you are. Without it, riches cannot bring peace. Tears filled Amara's eyes. Can it be returned? The elder looked toward the distant baobab tree. Only if the one who took it agrees, or if the bargain is broken by a greater sacrifice. That evening, Amara carried every bag of gold she had left back to the tree. As the sun disappeared behind the hills, the stranger appeared once again. I've come to return your money, said. He smiled. I have no need for it. Don't want it anymore. You wanted freedom from poverty. I was poor before, but I could still sleep. The stranger remained silent. If my shadow has any value, Amara continued, then take everything else instead. For the first time, the stranger's smile faded. You would give away your fortune? Without my soul, it means nothing. A powerful wind swept through the valley. The stranger stared at her for a long moment before raising his hand. From beneath his cloak, two shadows emerged and stretched across the ground. One returned to Amara's feet, joining her once more as though it had never left. Warmth rushed through her body. The heavy emptiness she had carried for months vanished in an instant. But not his, the stranger said, looking toward the village. Dagan never regretted his choice. At that moment, Dagan came running toward the tree. Desperate after days of fear and sleepless nights. I want my shadow back, he shouted. You traded it willingly, the stranger replied. I'll pay anything. You already did, the wind roared, and the stranger disappeared into the darkness, taking Dagan's shadow with him forever. From that day on, Amara lived simply again. She worked her land with honest hands and found joy in the small blessings she had once overlooked. Though she never became as wealthy as before, she was respected once more. And wherever she walked, her shadow faithfully followed. As for Dagan, people said he grew richer each year, yet no one ever saw him smile again. No matter how bright the sun, the ground beneath his feet remained empty, a reminder that some bargains can never be undone. The elders told the story for generations, warning that poverty can test a person's strength, but greed can destroy what even wealth cannot replace. Some things may seem worthless until the moment they are gone. And among them all, Parsons' shadow is the easiest to lose and the hardest to reclaim.